Hey y'all, JJ here. So this is the flag of Italy, we all know that, right? But did you know that in some circumstances, this can also be the flag of Italy? Or how about this, the flag of Brazil? But this can also be the flag of Brazil. And whose flag is this? Would you guess Russia? Almost every country in the world has a secret second flag, much like these ones. A flag that often doesn't look anything like their main one, but is just as legally valid, at least in some circumstances. The flag people call it a jack flag, or a naval jack, for reasons that you will soon understand. See, the history of flags is very much the history of ships. The modern flag was not invented so we would have something fun to hang on our patios on the 4th of July. It was invented so that navies would not accidentally shoot their own people. And as the navies of the world got more and more sophisticated, so did our flag traditions. By the mid-18th century, a lot of countries decided that their ships should fly this whole elaborate suite of flags so that other countries would know exactly what their deal was. So on the top of the ship, there would be this long streamer-style flag to show where the ship fit into the military hierarchy. This was often called the commission pennant or the rank flag or something like that. And then there would be a flag at the back called the Naval Ensign or Ensign. For most countries, this is just the standard national flag, although about 40 or so countries do have a special Naval Ensign flag. This is apparently a British custom that goes back to the time when the British had a very elaborate flag code for distinguishing their different ships. The standard British Naval Ensign looks like this, and most countries that used to be British colonies have a Naval Ensign flag that is basically just a copycat version. But a couple of other countries also like this idea of using a modified version of their flag when at sea, so they created ensign flags of their own, like Romania, Germany, Israel, and Morocco. But then there is flag number 3. The Jack. The Jack flag flies at the front of the ship, but these days only when the ship is in port. And these are the really wild ones. Now, the history of the Jack flag tradition is sort of a complicated one. The name Jack comes from the British Union Jack, although nobody really knows why the British themselves started using that name. But back in the day, because of their elaborate flag rules, the British would only ever fly their Union Jack at the front of their ships. And other countries got all confused and jealous. They were like, if the British have a Union Jack at the front of their ships, then we should too. So the Russians made a Union Jack for themselves, and so did Estonia and Bulgaria and a bunch of other countries. And as you can see, there was no subtlety about this at all. They literally just made knockoff Union Jacks because they thought this was something all the other sophisticated countries were doing. And then other countries wanted to jump on the bandwagon too, but because they weren't quite so Anglophilic, they came up with unique designs for their own Union Jacks. The American Union Jack, for instance, looked like this. This too was a ripoff of the British Union Jack, but in a more creative sort of way. See, since the British Naval Ensign looked like this, and the British Jack flag looked like this, and the American ensign flag looked like this, they thought that their Jack flag should look like this. Pretty clever. But then in 2002, George W. Bush changed the American Jack flag into this, which is obviously a sort of modified version of that famous snake flag. The official justification for this was that this was a recreation of a famous naval flag from the American Revolution, even though the Navy's own historian says that there is no evidence of this. The Brazilians copied the Americans by making a Jack flag that was just the stars from their flag as well. Chile does this as well, with their flag's 1 star. Try to keep up, Chile. Some countries went to other national symbols for their inspiration. The Spanish Jack looks like this, which is a blown up version of the coat of arms on their normal flag. Italy does the same thing, using the coat of arms from their navy to make their Jack. Ireland's is just a big green with a harp on it. France and Japan, meanwhile, just use their old naval flags from World War II. This Polish one looks historic in some way. The Dutch one is kind of cool because it's just their normal flag after you put it in one of those paint spinner things. And then you have those countries that have just defaced their normal flag by slapping on some nautical flair, like the Jack of Croatia or South Korea or Thailand. And then you've got the countries that just made up something completely out of nothing, like Mexico or Saudi Arabia or Belgium. Now, even though they are still in use, these Jack flags do not mean much these days. They are mostly just a sort of ceremonial throwback to a simpler time. I mean, in the 21st century, ships obviously have a lot more sophisticated ways of communicating with each other than just hoisting different pieces of colored cloth. So a lot of these surviving flag traditions are mostly just for fun. People in the Navy like to have a lot of fun. Today, you will only usually see a Jack flag if a ship is in port, giving the kids on the shore something to point and gawk at. In fact, that is the only reason why I was even aware of these these things at all. When I was a kid, there was this Soviet submarine that used to park in this port near where I lived, and you could go and do tours on it and stuff. And it had this flag, which I always thought was very mysterious, but I later learned was the Jack of the Soviet Union. And now, 30 years later, with the completion of this video, that chapter of my life is finally closed. How different the world of today is, and yet how similar. So, parting question for you, have you ever seen any of these flags before? In fact, have you ever even seen a ship from a navy in a port before? I sometimes forget that not everyone in this world lives on the coast of an ocean. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next week.